Capitec has partnered with female artists to reimagine what future South African currency could potentially look like with a woman represented. According to the bank, only 9% of the world's currency features women. The bank has partnered with artists Rendani Nemakabani, Anja Fenter and Zanele Montle to reimagine what future South African currency could potentially look like with a woman represented. Now this morning we're joined by graphic designer, art director and creative director Rendani Nemakabani to share more on what inspired her banknotes. Rendani, very good morning to you. Thank you so much for joining us. Welcome to Morning Live.
Thank you so much for having me. How are you doing today?
I'm very well, Rendani. Can't complain. Can't complain at all. Firstly, tell us how you got to be a part of this campaign.
I was contacted by someone from Capitec. They had been doing research to just find out who are the women in the country who are doing really amazing work. And I guess I was one of the people who made their list.
Okay, so why do you believe Mira Makeba should feature on our currency?
Because her story isn't told enough. You know, like we have so many amazing artist women in particular who have done so much for the country. And it just feels like there aren't enough of their stories told. So I felt for me, like this would be like a very amazing place for us to start, you know, telling her story and what she's done for the country. Yeah.
And just working on the banknote, how did you make sure that she's shown boldly and fits the note?
It's just the style that I work in, you know. As someone who's an artist, you have to consider these things before you actually start to put them on paper. So this image felt like the most right one to use. It's easily identifiable. And I think like a lot of us are familiar with this particular picture of her because of this really stunning, amazing hat that she's wearing. Yeah.
How long did you work on the note? And just take us through the process. Was it perfect when you tried it the first time?
Not really, you know, like I think as you are working and making the work, you try over and over again to do something that feels right. So it took me probably like 2 to 3 weeks to get this feeling the right way that I wanted it to feel for myself, you know. And it's always like, if I am not happy with how it looks, then I cannot share the work ultimately. So because I had already started like thinking in this direction before Capitec had approached me, I already had a template for myself that I had built, which helped a lot in basically like bringing down the amount of time that I'd spent on this. So, yeah.
Did you get a brief from Capitec or you simply let your creativity run wild?
I don't know if there's such a thing as creativity running wild for me in particular, but I did definitely get a brief from them. And I think because of the style of work that I do, and because I had already started thinking about this and I had already done work that is in this similar direction, they felt like I was the right fit for the job. So following this brief wasn't a difficult thing for me. It was like, yeah, it just felt like a fitting job for me to be a part of.
And how do you think having women on our currency would change people's perception and the role of women in the country?
I think it definitely does the job of starting conversations around why these type of things need to exist. You know, we live in a very patriarchal space and time, and it just seems like there are a lot of things that women do that they are in the forefront of that is not spoken about enough, that isn't put out enough, that isn't shared enough, you know. So I think that what this will do, it will start to change how people perceive how women should be paid, for example. Like we can't still be living in 2021 and women are still being paid less than what men are, you know, like what is the basis for that metric? And also just as people, if we're living in a country that says, hey, we're all about equality and then let's start showing it in places and in spaces where people interact with on a daily basis. You know, money is a thing that all of us interact with on a daily basis, whether you have a lot of it or a little of it, you know, you're still like interacting with that piece of paper that has some kind of quality attached to it. So it feels like a very important thing for us to be talking about And I really hope that this is a thing that can become a real thing, and it's not just a project that was made for Women's Month, you know. I really hope that we can see it through.
Yeah, and if it does indeed come into fruition, it can be a world first. I mean, it can place South Africa on such a pedestal that the whole world will look up to South Africa in terms of embracing and propping up women's rights. So do you have an idea whether the country's authorities, in particular the Reserve Bank and the Treasury, have come on board maybe to just weigh in on this particular project?
I'm hoping that Capitec has done the job of starting that conversation with the Reserve Bank, and that like it's a really deep, serious chat. But I also do think that South Africa would not be the first to have women on money. I mean, it's happening in the world already. It's just in a very small numbers, like 9% of the world has that thing happening. But I think it would be such an amazing thing to happen in Africa in particular, you know, because we can't keep leaving women out of things, or just like not considering women in a space that they help to make a better place, essentially. You know, we can't just always be in the background. So I really hope that the Reserve Bank will open their hearts and their minds to this and realize what an amazing idea it is.
And where are the notes currently on display?
They're with Capitec. They're also all over social media. They're doing a good job of promoting this for the month with the other two amazing artists that I've been working with on this. So you can definitely find it on the Capitec Instagram page as well as on their Twitter feed.
Okay. Now, Rendani, what else are you working on?
I am working on a project called President Honey. And it's basically about an expression of Blackness that is very dear to my heart. Just like putting women in the forefront, you know, putting myself and speaking to representation, which is why this project is really amazing to work with, because it speaks to that as well. And I'm a big believer in representing Black people in a positive light. And that's what I always try to do in my work. So in this upcoming version of President Honey, we're going to see some like new ways of exposing ourselves, and also just me exposing my art and making it more accessible to people, Black people in particular, because it seems like that's a space that a lot of art is made for, but there isn't enough access to it, you know. So I'm hoping that this part of President Honey will do the job of creating a more accessible space for art and for me as a maker as well.
Okay, Rendani, lovely chatting to you. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you so much for having me.
The hashtag Reimagine the Rand South Africa initiative represents hope and love to women in the country. We just spoke to graphic designer, art director and creative director Rendani Nemakabani.